Welcome back again to another Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Ginger, and Mike. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We have another caller in today. Ginger's with us. Ginger, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks a lot.
We're just going to kick you off here right from the very beginning. Ginger has joined us for this. This is our second episode with Ginger. We're going through things about data science. So our main topic today is around, should the data scientist actually care about Power BI? Maybe the question is really even, did they even care about Power BI before we had Fabric? What does this new world look like for a data scientist and the intersection between that and Power BI? But before we get into our main topic today, let's jump over to some of the news articles for today. All right, Tommy, what do you have for us here? What kind of news you're bringing to us?
We got another great article on the Fabric blog about user data functions. Not to be confused with defined functions. User data functions are in Fabric. And This article is simply about some common use cases for building solutions. And it just talks about different ways that you can implement it. I think for a lot of people right now, user data functions are it's a bit of a black box, still a little ambiguous on terms of application for it. Where can I use it? So the article tries to outline all the different areas that you can use it. I went through this. I'm intrigued to hear your guys' thoughts before I jump in. But after reading this, Mike, what do you think of this?
Well, let me just give you my impression of user data functions. Okay. First off, the naming is ridiculously confusing. These things are called UDFs, which is the same thing as what's in now Power BI or coming to Power BI, which will be user data defined. Blah, blah, blah. I already messed it up. See, this is already tripping me up. User defined functions is inside DAX. User data functions are basically Azure functions that have been brought to Microsoft Fabric, which is like a software as a service for a function. So, my initial impression here, Tommy, is I really like this one. I am also very, maybe not miffed, but I'm a little bit more like curious as to why the graphic they showed on this page has a lake house. Okay, I understand what that is. It has a pipeline. Got it. Know what's going on. These little effects functions. Okay, fine. Maybe the functions are replacing like a notebook that I would do data transformations or something like that. I mean, this is pure coding of stuff, right? And then we get to this very end of this diagram and they got this weird new shape and they're saying API for GraphQL endpoint. And then they're saying land your data in an internal web application. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, time out. All right, we're talking about user data functions here. And all of a sudden we're now talking about like web apps and GraphQL things. I really like those. I think they're really strong and powerful tools. But to me, it's missing the whole audience of what we're talking to Fabric here and the Power BI audience. Where's the semantic model? Where's the report? What's the value being added to this thing? This feels like we're trying to really shift the story away from, hey, this is a Power BI reporting space to this is an app build. I mean, I'm looking at this going, this is totally app building. And maybe that is the story here with user UDFs for Fabric. Maybe we are talking a lot more data apps with APIs, access endpoints, all the other things that go on top of it. So that was one of the things here. I mean, I really like them. The other impression I have is, do you guys follow Mim on Twitter? Mim it's just Mim. It's MimDJO. I don't remember Mim's last name. But Mim has been talking a lot about UDFs. And he said, I saved a lot of consumption today just by moving down his logic into UDFs. He made 288 calls per day across 4 different data sources, and he substantially reduced his consumption on the Fabric. And I think he's looking here, he's showing you like numbers by day. He was doing like 4,500 CUs per day of consumption, and he basically shaved off like a third of that in one day just by transferring over to UDFs. So I do know that Azure functions are extremely cheap to run. They're extremely efficient from that perspective. So I like this a lot because this is another tool in our arsenal, in our toolbox, to make an efficient data pipeline, and we can probably bring data to bronze easier and cheaper. But this is a holistic, this is a full code option, all code. So I don't think it's going to be used for your average everyday user. Maybe data engineers, data scientists will like it, but I don't think it's something that an average user is going to use. Sorry, I'll pause there. Ginger, what's your impression?
I can't tell what by this article that they're for or what they do. I mean, yes. I know what medallion architecture is. I know what, but how they're integrating. I don't get this, but I really am going to be looking at MIM stuff because that sounds very interesting.
I think if you like that, Mike.
Well, so let me give you some more context of where I think this is going to fit. Right, we're going to do the work in notebooks. It's just going to happen. We're going to do the work in pipelines. It's just going to happen. But there are certain things like API calls or talking to a web service. Like, yeah, I can build a pipeline to do that stuff. But it might actually be easier, or I might be able to find a pattern. If I'm just making an API call, getting a JSON object, and then saving that back down to the lakehouse, that's a perfect use case to replace your pipeline with something cheaper to run, which would potentially just be a UDF, user data function. So I think there's a really great opportunity here. And a lot of these diagrams they show in this article are all around interacting with a web app, sending data to and from an actual web application. One thing I think you'll also notice as well, the user data functions are also used in the translytical workloads. So translytical is this other term that Microsoft is trying to work on, where they say, look, we have a Power BI report. You can select some data from that, and then you can physically send that data to a UDF, user data function, which can then update a record, put it in a SQL table, insert something, right? You can actually take some information in, add your comments to a report, and then round robin the data immediately as soon as you press the data. So I do think, I see Lumel having something as a workload inside Microsoft Fabric. And I think they're going to take advantage of this, software as a service functions and databases and SQL databases. I think they're going to be able to leverage this to allow people to make tables of data super editable or dynamic all inside Fabric, but you're going to be using the UDF as the main workhorse to, when an event occurs, do something with it. Does that make sense?
That's a completely different data paradigm, though. That's basically
it is.
This may be a mini rant, so bear with me here. But Mike, your comment about how much this saves compared to using a normal pipeline, I'm fine with the UDFs here, the user data functions, especially if it's more for the developer role. But if the fact here that compared to a pipeline, this saves more consumption, then who is this for, right? Because if we already know that Power Query is something available, but we know how much CUs that consumes. Okay, well, don't use Power Query. Use notebooks. Oh, wait, now UDFs are here, and they're better than notebooks or better than pipelines. Well, I'm not a fan of all these products are one size fits all where they can do everything, right? I'm more on the fact of, or more on the thing where some things are better than others around for web applications. Yeah, user data functions. But if I can do the same thing here, well, then Fabric completely changes for who it's for. And there's a thought here because all of a sudden the business user, well, they're going to naturally go to Power Query. It's just the natural thing for a business user to do. I'm not going to expect, right? But so if this can do everything up into the notebook or up into the database that a notebook can, but it can do it better. Well, all of a sudden, all those other things, why would I want to have anyone using those CUs?
Let's even talk about our Fabric leaders at this point. Let's talk about the leaders in our organization. We now have so many choices, and this is great, right? I love choices, but Tommy, all this is securing our jobs for years now, because so here's the pecking order and how I see it. It starts with data flows Gen 2, most expensive thing you're going to run. Data flows Gen 1, cheaper, but can't use a lake. Boo. Then we see pipelines and copy activities, cheaper still, better, right? Notebooks, better, cheaper, right? I would put notebooks and pipelines at the same level as far as efficiency, right? And now we just added another item, which is now UDFs, even cheaper, more efficient, but it's the pricing model. So as we look at each of these tools, all of them have a quote unquote different pricing model on how many CUs you can use and consume. So I really think, to your point, Tommy, all this is doing is it's accelerating the story for data engineers and potentially data scientists to use these things, right? Because they're already used to writing lines of code in either Python or something else, right? They're comfortable with that. I would also argue I don't think this feature is really geared towards the business user at this point.
No, but go ahead.
Ginger, up to you.
Well, one thing too is that they're trying to push this towards, this is really easy to debug. This is basically one of those things that's going to like the guy who you come after because he was the best guy who did this thing in Excel and nobody knows it. This has the potential of being that one guy
thing.
Knew.
Yep.
Yeah. Somebody else knows how to maintain it.
Once you start using it, you
really
have
good
now
point.
built the barrier to entry. You've made it more inaccessible for the common user. And if part of my process when I'm talking to clients is, oh, you know what? You can use Fabric. You can actually have a lake house now because you can use data flows. You don't have to be an engineer to start getting your data in.
Sure.
But you do need an F64 compared if you look at this SKU because you're using data flows, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we come in and we start putting in UDFs and notebooks, well, I've closed now how many people can use Fabric. And to Ginger's point, exactly. Well, it's only available for people who know that language.
Yes.
And again, we've already talked about notebooks, and now we're adding another layer here where if a consultant came in or some, one of us nerds came in and started using UDFs, well, guess what? Only that person or that type of person can go in. And now for the business user, where does Fabric fit?
Yeah. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where this place moves. I think that one, I do like the idea, right? So I'm not going to poo-poo this idea. I like the fact that I get another option to pick something that I'm doing here. Again, to your point, Tommy, for larger organizations where they have multiple skills across multiple team members, this makes sense. Like this is definitely like when writing Python, UDF or user-defined functions, user data functions, that makes sense to me. We should do that. And I also think writing sometimes just pure Python and getting a API call completed, token request, sometimes token handling things are very complex to get a token. The function can do really complex things of like have all these different items in them. What will need to be delivered at some point will be, I need a tight integration between these user-defined functions and something like a key vault. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to store my secrets or my secret elements inside the function itself. Rather, I need somewhere to store those secrets somewhere else that's not inside the function, which then is not inside the code that doesn't get checked into the Git. So to me, I'm looking at this going, like the idea, this is really cool. Definitely love the idea that we can replace our notebooks or like once you know the data engineering you're doing, you could probably, you might even be able to go into your notebook and say, hey, I'm taking this cell or this notebook, talk to the Copilot and say, take what this notebook is doing. Here's the defined data frame or the files where I'm picking them up from. Create me a UDF function written in Python that does the same things. And you might be able to get pretty close to the answer you need. And then, so the AI of this, to your point, Tommy, right? You need to have people who know how to write this code. AI is making this the barrier to entry for these things is getting much lower.
This is another good point.
Yeah.
Ginger, you're going to say something?
I was going to say, I just kind of agree with you because I forgot about, AI is so new and I still don't see people adopting it in the rate that I think that they should, but you're right. If you could just go to clip the code and say, what is it doing? Problem solved.
So so AI is really good when it has an example to work from. And if you have a notebook that's done, that's a great example to feed into the AI. It can read the Python. It knows the data frames. It can see what's going. So, okay, this is going to go into our next topic. So let's go on to our next topic because I have another whole. Michael has gone down a tangent. I was up extremely late last night. So let's get on to our next topic. And I think we'll have more conversation around large language models and where they fit inside the context of coding. Tommy, you found another topic for us. Give us our second news article of the day.
Well, I'm interested to hear about what you have to say. So I think they go very well together. And it's about custom instructions.
Oh, should I do mine first?
Yeah, I want to hear about what you got.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I'll give you a quick story and then I'll actually talk about my item here. This is a beat from the street, basically. I have been working on websites. So I've been doing a lot of app development and building. At Fabric Conference, I just released the Microsoft Intelexos application, which is a embedded application for users to get embedding their reports in Power BI. So Power BI embedded for your organization. You can start in hours and not have to worry about doing that in months of time at development. So
no
a really rich
UDFs
experience.
needed.
No UDFs needed. It's all user friendly. Go to the Azure Marketplace. You can download it. So in doing that, there's a lot of these other like things you need to build that go along with that, like update your documentation. You got to build these other things. Well, okay. Introduce Michael's problem. Yesterday, I was looking at our code and we had a documentation page. On our docs page, we have, I don't have any Google Analytics. So I'm using a program called Astro.build, which is it's like an open source templating type program that uses, I think it's TypeScript, TSX, I think is what it is. Anyways, we're using it so you can write markdown files of the documentation. And then from there, you can just read about the product, right? I can add more pages. It's just simple markdown. I write markdown and the website's built and compiled. Great. Well, I could not figure out for the life of me how to add Google Analytics to this thing. And I was getting so angry and I was getting so frustrated. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I just so happened to have installed Cursor on my computer.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, after probably about 3 to 4 hours of just mucking around with building or trying to at least add Google Analytics into this website, and I couldn't do it. It still wouldn't work. Nothing was sending any data anywhere. I didn't know where to put the code. It didn't look like my other sites that we had built previously.
No.
So I'm frustrated. So I went over to Cursor and I said, hey, Cursor, using Astro.build as a template, build me a documentation page that has this kind of navigation menu, that the menu featured options look like this. Has a search bar, has all these things. So I just started stubbing things out, and I'll be doggone if I didn't have Google Analytics added, a brand new website made with new logos, all new menu items, and not even that, I had stubbed out pages with the folder structure completed in less time than it took me to beat my head on the wall to figure out how to put Google Analytics the first time. So this was, I think they call this vibe coding, right? You talk to a large language model, it does some things on the page, it makes some pages, it does some code. Holy cow. I was floored. And so whenever I hear about AI or Copilot showing up to something, this is the kind of experience, like this is the aha moment that I want to have when I interact with Copilot or other AI experiences. I do something and it almost shocks me how good it is. Like, it's like, wait a minute. It feels like, so my mental model was changing about this Cursor program. Halfway through my vibe coding experience with this, I'm starting to like, it's communicating to me. It says, not only will I ask it to do something, it'll say, let me think about that. Let me read your code. It will go through, it'll then read the code, and then it would come back and say, okay, I think I know what to do. And it would rewrite the whole code section, and it would describe to me, okay, I'm doing this. I removed this. I've added this. I've changed the formatting of this. And here's the property that I'm changing. So you know like what it's doing. So you could read it in easy to use. It's literally, I have like a coding buddy next to me, and they're helping me learn the code right alongside me. I was blown away. Like, this is crazy cool. I was like, this is amazing what's happening here. So anyways, I'll just pause right there, Tommy. Have you vibe coded and is this the same experience that you've had with it?
So there's two big things that are what this vibe coding is and what's making it actually possible. Now, Cursor introduced it and VS Code just announced it as well. So there's two big things here. There's this idea of custom instructions and agents that are making vibe coding possible. And again, the definition here of vibe coding is really just building applications simply through using your AI and letting it do its thing. So this idea with agents, we've been used to Copilot and VS Code where here's a page, make some edits to this page. The difference with agents is I may have a project. For your example, I have a site with multiple pages and multiple files. And
each page is a separate file.
Right. What agents actually do is rather than, hey, I'm going to just edit this one page, it can look at the whole code base and basically make all the edits, create pages. It's creating files, creating the right
folders,
necessary.
everything.
So, with Cursor, they have also the reasoning one. So Claude and Google which will actually say, here's all my instructions. It's going to reason and actually make the steps, then do the coding. You can grab coffee, your application's built.
It's so
insane.
fast.
Right.
And it does this other weird thing too, where it was like, not only was it writing the code for me, it was writing the code for me, and then it was even getting the feedback of the error messages that the code that it wrote was doing, and it would read it, and sometimes it would say, it would write a section of code, and it thought it did it right, and then it would read back the window of where the code lives and says, oh, I see there's an error on line 2. Let me look at that a little bit closer. Oh, I see. I didn't quite add the references the way I should have. And it says, let me try a different approach. And it would try a different approach. It would rewrite it, and it would work. And I'm like, what the heck? And then it started talking to me like, we just did this. We just did that. And after it did something hard, I was like, "Good job!" I typed into the window, "Good job! I think we got it." And I'm like, "Wait a minute! It's a computer. It doesn't have a clue what we're talking about. It has no emotion." Like, I was floored on how good this was, and I thought, I knew it was good. I knew people were raving about it, but oh my goodness, I did not know it was this good. And this is fundamentally shifting how I'm perceiving. Like, what is the expectation for where we put Copilot to things? This raised the bar tenfold for me here, especially in writing code. And this is what gives me hope for things like user data functions, which is like, all right, put a great vibe coding experience next to that, and done. Like, we're complete. Like, here, hey, cursor, here's my notebook from Spark, from my Spark notebook. Rewrite this whole thing and make it just a single function. Like, that could be possible now.
A lot of people fall into the trap with AI that they take it in the lazy approach where I'm just going to ask it a question with the sentence and expect it to fix it all. But it does take a little, the more effective you are with these AI agents, the more effective it's going to be. So one is not understanding the right agent to use, but what VS Code just introduced, and Cursor's had it, is this concept of custom instructions around a project. I'll give you a good example that would be completely relevant to Power BI. I have a Git repo with a bunch of Tyndall files. I can write in that repo and in a certain folder, a semantic model. In Copilot, I think it's like .custom Copilot instructions. That has all the instructions that I want it to behave, act, and understand before I ask it anything, such as, I want you to only write code back. I don't want you to ask me questions. I want you to do it yourself. This is a Power BI model. Here's the objective. So it's basically your instructions you're going to give it before you start actually prompting it. This is essential, and that changes how it's going to write. So I really, any project that I'm doing in VS Code has that type of file or multiple files. For example, I'm going to ask it if it's a Power BI. I give all the instructions. This is a Power BI Tyndall model. Do not edit any of the definition files until I approve it. So things is not like, please take a look at this report folder. This is connected to this. Here are the things that I want. And then you can start asking it questions, and that's really where you see the effectiveness. So these custom instructions, if you're using VS Code or any of these tools, they're a game changer. You have to really start using them.
Wow.
And they're written in Markdown. You can reference files and folders.
Let me also go here too. So I'm reading through. So I put the article here too.
Yeah.
So Visual Studio Code now has custom AI instructions, and you'll see in the article here there's some coding standards they have. So basically, you could send it your coding standards, right? Use camel case for variable and function names. Use Pascal case for component names. Use single quote for strings. Use 2 spaces for your indentation, right? So all the things that you would kind of like set up with like a new user, like here's our standards of what we would use. This is how you would leverage these common design patterns. So that way you're, don't edit the code until I do this, or, right here, it says, use the latest JavaScript features ES6+ where possible. Like, wow. I mean, you can get really specific with this to get exactly what you want out of it.
4 areas I always add custom instructions. I say context, what it's about, objective for the overall project, and then the coding standards. And those 3 things are always part of the custom instructions. What are you overall trying to do? And it's really, Mike, to your point, people need to get started in this. And it works with Power BI too. It works with Tyndall. It works with the coding language that we have in Fabric.
Oh, so yesterday in my middle of my vibe code session, when it asked me, hey, do you want to add this file to something to help the Copilot? I'm like, what is that doing? I don't even know what that means. I think it was prompted, like, I think the little, VS Code was prompting me with like a little message to like make the Copilot dash instructions markdown file in the .github folder. So where this lives is if you're in Copilot, or so if you're in VS Code and you're using Copilot, there is a .github file folder that's made, and then under there, this is just a markdown file that you write, and then from there, you put the instructions inside that. Exactly. That's really cool. Wow. This is amazing. So anyways, I was floored. I was very impressed, and I'm still, so the website, sadly, the website is not published. It's not out. I haven't done anything with that, but this was just a very big exploration of me. We still have the old documentation site up and running, and we'll figure out how to get Google Analytics on it eventually. But I was just taking a very big rabbit trail tangent, and it was doing like other things. Like I was doing crazy stuff, like add a search bar at the top of the header, and then when the page size shrinks below 700 pixels, take the search bar and make it very small and just an icon and not a search bar. Like crazy weird things. Like you could get very hyper specific. And one thing so let me give you the dark side of this. The dark side that I saw. The dark side I saw of this was when I asked it to write like the navigation menu on the left side and then the actual content on the main page, it coded the entire navigation menu. And again, you have to do this anyways when you're building apps regardless, but it wrote a lot of redundant lists of HTML, right? So the menu on the left-hand side is a bunch of lists, right? Here's a list for all of the main headers, right? And there's a list for every page under any of the subheadings. So it did a lot of extra work, and it wrote a lot of just verbose HTML instead of, again, this is probably my lousy prompting at this point, right? I probably should have said, make a component for a navigation menu. Okay, now in that component, make a component for a header. A header does these kind of things. And then under the header, make these pages, and then make this all component based. So I think I could have prompted a little bit better, but it just built the HTML like straight up. It worked just fine. My challenge now becomes that if I wanted to add new pages or add new things, I'm copying a lot of HTML over and over and over again. So what I'm starting to do now is I'm starting to go back to sections of code inside this and say, okay, this bit of code is repeated multiple times. Highlight the code, tell cursor, here's a bit of code I'm talking about. This code looks like it's repeated multiple times for every single page in this navigation menu. Make this a component and add this and this and this as parameters, and then the code gets much shorter. And it basically makes a new file, it makes a component, it builds what I need for that interaction of that element, but it doesn't make me have repeating code over and over again. So I think this is something that you as the user writing or talking to the LLM, you must understand like the code structure. What is, again, I'm talking about website development. What is a component on a website? How is that component reused multiple times? In each of these code blocks that you're building, where is the uniqueness coming from? And how can you communicate to the AI what are the input properties that you need for it to work correctly or successfully? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you know what? I totally think it makes sense. And also, I think that Jack Irby had a great point. So you can tell it what it should be doing.
Well,
yes.
Let me blow your mind one last time, and then I'll be done with.
Keep going, Tommy. Keep going. Tommy loves AI. This kind of stuff.
This is blow your mind. This is gonna blow your mind. You have two custom instruction pages, two different agents. You do your normal one. The other one is your point deduction editor, which you simply tell it, go through the code after your first Copilot or agent goes through, does everything. The other one deduct points from the first agent. You basically tell it, I want you to go through the code. Agent one did X, Y, and Z. Apply best practices, and wherever this agent did not, such as redundant code, yada, yada, deduct points, and then go through and apply the best practices according to X, Y, and Z. So there's basically two different custom instructions, two different agents that are reviewing each other. This is, and it's completely easy to do.
What on earth?
Oh, no. So you really don't have to know what you're doing. You have the other agent who knows what it's doing.
Well, yeah, but somebody has to tell the supervisor agent, hey, these are the rules.
Yes.
And it's still, it's still back to somebody has to.
And Ginger, I want to echo your same point there as well. Like there's this idea of like, you need to step back and know what so one of the things that I really liked about this experience, or this vibe coding experience, was I was able to step back a bit, right? I was able to step back from like, I need code to do this accordion menu thing. Like that's one thing you could get really deep into the technical side. But when I let the Copilot just kind of own that, like that junior developer standpoint and could step back, I could say, make a menu, make a nav menu, do this. And then I actually found it was teaching me a little bit, right? About like, okay, I didn't really like the style of that. So like I can, and one thing I really liked about this cursor app that I really liked, which was you would give it a prompt, it would do a bunch of code manipulation. And then you could always, like, if it did something that you're like, whoa, that was really not right, you could always go back and say, revert to this step. So that's something I've never seen before, which is the ability of like you letting the Copilot do a bunch of code generation for you. And then you were able to like, I didn't like that step. And you could walk it all the way back to where you were previously and it would restore the files to where it was. So that was a big win for me. But I could stop thinking about the code and how the code interacts with the page. I could start thinking about the structure of the page. Where does the nav bar go? What does the spacing look like? And I could literally let it run its code. And then meanwhile, I'm on a different page here looking at like inspect the page elements, looking at the padding and the margins and like, that looks a little bit too far apart. So I really felt like I was able to take on more of the role of like a program manager or a PM, or like I could take the lens of where I'm used to looking at is like in the code. I could step back a step and get a higher picture of what was happening. And I could architect and design at a higher level, which was very refreshing. And after my 4-hour Google Analytics head bashing episode, I was like, this is why I stayed up to like 2 a.m. doing this, because I was so excited about like, oh my gosh, this is making so much progress. Oh my gosh, I'm almost there. Oh my gosh, I'm getting close to getting a finished product here. This is something that could be real. So now my next step is to figure out, is this something I can actually get into like a deployable solution, or, how can I leverage this somewhere else? This should make it really easy for anyone to go out and build like a GitHub Pages experience. You're going to be able to make let me say that something else here. This reduces the barrier to building your own website for you, your resume or whatever, like zero. Like it's literally zero. If you spent 4 to 8 hours in one day just asking it to build you a website, you could probably knock this thing out in less time than that and have it automatically deployed and done, running on GitHub for free. Like all this is going to do, it's going to reduce the barrier for people to get into the marketplace for building apps, dev things, all this kind of other stuff. And I'm very excited about this because this is good now. Dude, wait until, a year from now. What's this going to look like in a year from now? It's going to be insane. So anyways, this is all, let me recap things. Mike and Tommy and Ginger, we've all been very excited about this vibe coding experience. This first 30 minutes of the episode of the podcast has been nothing about Power BI other than the user data functions, but let's kill that conversation. Yeah. How about we move back over to our main session, because we're already 30 minutes deep and we've just been talking about this weird vibe coding experience and how this is going to change everything we do. So let's move back over to data science now, which is kind of related to this vibe coding experience here as well. But let's jump into our main topic now. We'll talk about, should a data scientist actually care about Power BI? All right, Tommy, let me kick it over to you. Give me some initial thoughts, Tommy. Where do you think data scientists fit in this world? And then we'll discuss from there.
Oh, well, this is a conversation we've had multiple times over the last 5 years of doing this podcast, and something that was really brought up our last episode with Ginger, where we've found the problem for business intelligence people to get data scientists actively and volunteering involved with Power BI. And we're talking about the Power BI platform, not just Fabric, where there's been pushback. There's been, I want to use my own tooling. I personally found it incredibly difficult for them to buy in with, we're going to use Power BI. We talked about it being a different world. And at the state of where we are now with Fabric, and the state where we are with Power BI being so across what we do around data, for a data scientist or for anyone in the data science area, where does Power BI have any value to them? Should they care? Should they actually look into using it at all? Because right now, a lot of the times we see where they want to use their own tooling, their own platform. So really the questions are here is, should a data scientist really look for it? For us as from the center of excellence, push data scientists into Power BI? And if we want to, how can we?
So let me kick the question over to you, Ginger, as well. So in lieu of those kind of framing points around, what is the what do you see as maybe even what is the lens in which data scientists look at Power BI and Fabric, and what are they interested in or not interested in there? What's going on from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, they used to want to visualize the results, but they kind of like backed off of that and just said, nah, I'm not going to play in that world. It's too much of a leap. But what I think that they just want to not having to deal with the implementation.
Yes.
So not to do anything with a Power BI per se, but if they can, their goal is to have somebody like we want somebody to use the work that we've done, right?
Yes. Yes.
So it's more like, I want to create a module and then we'll put that in the process so that you can get the data out of it, and then we're done. I'm out. So is that technically, so I do not see a demand. Back in the day, I mean, I did know some people that were playing around with R because they could get the cool visuals in, but with things like Deneb, you don't really need that. And they never really adopted it for their visuals. So I think that they used to care more, and now they care even less.
Wow. I would agree with you, Ginger. I think a lot of this is, if you think about like the presentation layer or the consumption layer of what the data scientist is doing, there seems to be like a handoff that tries to occur somewhere in here. And I think if I think about like where data scientists enjoy, right, or where I've seen them working to use their skills the best, right? Their skills best are served in like, loading the different data, shaping data in really weird formats. Like we've got images, we've got to like pull text out of things. We got to do a lot of text analytics. There's other things like a lot of like, how do we know which variables are correlated together? Like, correlation matrix kind of stuff, like doing very heavy analysis. And what I have found is data scientists like to stay in their Python. They like to stay in their notebooks, and they just kind of build what they need to build. And I had a data scientist who was writing a whole bunch of, I think we were writing R inside a SQL server and using the SQL server to like run the R to produce the results that the data science results that we could then regularly kick out. Like, here's the results of the analytics. So where I find is data scientists are really good at figuring out how to solve the problems, really able to figure out what analytics we need around the data. What we lack, I think, though, is the polish on the presentation side. And there's this idea of like a data pipeline. Now, again, I'm just very much generalizing my experiences with data scientists that I have. This is not to put all data scientists in a box. Some are great at making a pipeline, but I have found the data scientists that I have worked with, they are not interested in doing the data ops or the data pipeline of things. They want to solve the problem. They want to look at the technology. They want to write Python however they want to write it. They're going to use random SQL. They may use some R. They may use notebooks. They may use local machine stuff, but they're not thinking about how do I productionalize what I built into a system. That seems like that's a different kind of persona or user. And so where I think pairing this really well was bring the data scientists in to work in the medallion architecture. And then once we get to gold, bring in that data engineer and say, okay, what did the data scientist produce? How do we join their results back to our normal star schemas and models, and then pull in that to our reporting so we can actually see the predictions, the forecasting. I'll pause right there. Tommy, you're nodding your head here. Looks like you got something to say.
Well, I think it's important to take a few steps back even before you get to the pipeline, because for the data scientists, I think the difference between us and data scientists is the product life cycle, or how long it is, really what their objectives are. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there's really kind of two project-based initiatives that data scientists are going to do. It's going to be systematic, where something like the credit card fraud, where it doesn't really live in a report. It's a module or a model that's actually living in the system itself, that's manipulating the system through data.
Sure.
Or it's project-based one-off types of reports, where we're going to present something that was asked of us, but it's not meant to be viewed for a long time after. We want to see the results of this. Both of those don't fit well with how we develop in Power BI. Our objective usually with Power BI is a semantic model. usually that's going to live longer than a week or longer than a day. It's going to have a longer product life cycle. So those, when you split that up, you have the data scientist who's systematically changing data in the back end, or a single presentation, which again would be pretty difficult to do once in Power BI, or for a data scientist. I can easily just visualize this in a notebook or visualize this in PowerPoint for my consumers, but I really don't have consumers. I have project-based, presentations, or everything's systematic. So they're really different worlds even before you get to the pipeline. I don't know how accurate or if that's still kind of the case, but Ginger, I'll drop it to you. How close is that?
I think you're right, but there's one thing that you haven't mentioned that basically technically it's more a Fabric thing than it is in Power BI, but I really see that there's probably more of a use of data scientists if you're talking about streaming.
I would agree with this one. I like this one where you're going with it. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think that where I would see that they would be more likely to be involved in a Fabric environment. Because to your point, yeah, here's this one answer, here's this one thing. I don't really need to be involved with what is going on here. But if you're doing real-time analysis of streaming data, different story.
Yeah.
I like that point as well. I think, Ginger, when we start moving to Delta tables, Parquet, the back, I mean, it's not difficult for people to understand. But I think when I came from the business intelligence world and I started doing data science, data scientists kind of were already on this bandwagon of lake houses and Delta tables, and then the Delta Lake kind of came out, and that was a game changer for me. I was like, wow, Delta Lake is really nice. It solves a lot of my normal SQL warehouse ACID transactions problems. But that was a data science thing. I understood it. I took classes on it. I studied this in school. I was understanding how that experience worked. Most of my business intelligence people didn't. Maybe they did if they were a DBA on a SQL database. There was a whole storage engine inside SQL and indexing and all this other kind of really interesting things for SQL to make it performant, right? We have these two worlds that are kind of very different. We had the SQL DBA traditional business intelligence, and then we have this new data science realm here that's really shaking the game up. And now we're kind of blending those two worlds, I think, a lot. And I think a lot more so because when you look at what features were added to Fabric originally came out with the Lakehouse and the notebooks first. Mm-hmm. They always had real-time analytics, to your point, Ginger. That's a very data science-y thing right there. But then only just recently have we just gotten SQL Server. So I think the DBAs kind of felt like they got left out of Fabric for a little bit here, and now we're just starting to incorporate them. And so I agree with you. Real-time analytics is interesting. How do you stream data into tables? Will Thompson does the real-time analytics, or has been doing things there. He's doing a great job, by the way. It's the product's getting better. It's getting easier to use the real-time analytics of things. One thing I will observe, though, is he made a comment that resonated with me. He goes, very rarely is your data static. Is it sitting in one place and not doing anything? And what he meant by that was you're getting emails in your inbox. It's event-driven. Most of things you're doing are event-driven things. So now it becomes our team's need in the business intelligence and central BI. We have to not only do historical reporting of what happened in the past, we now need to be mindful of, okay, what parts of our data is actually streaming and what would we care about that is streaming? So again, I think we're in an era here where we're either in the middle of it or we're getting to the mature side of it where everything comes with an API. Everything does. So before we had APIs to talk to applications, everything was siloed. But I think now that APIs exist and we have all these webhooks and APIs and every app that you see come out now has a data layer that you can talk to and communicate with. And I'm going to go back to the large language models. Now we have these model communication protocols, MCPs, that can talk to these APIs for you on behalf of you. And then I can just talk to the software, right? I saw a demo on X last night when I was scrolling after I got done vibe coding. Apparently Twitter is so smart. It could see me like just screaming at the computer through my phone and like, oh, this is amazing. This is so good. And so now my feed is inundated with like
follow 20 people you didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. There's like inundation of just constant large, like all these. Anyways, so someone was showing me there's a model communication protocol for Figma where you could run the model protocol language. And you could talk to it and say, hey, make me a frame that is of this size, add these things on it, add this coloring to it, and have these kind of features to it. And it would go out. And again, if you know the words of the program, frame, square, diagram, whatever this thing is, you can start, again, talking. I just talk to it. I don't need to know where all the buttons are. My kids are younger. They're 15 down to 11. This is going to change how they do things. Like my son and I recently just programmed Pong inside Scratch. So we did the Pong game with the little paddles and such. We reprogrammed it inside Scratch, and he was okay. And then we started adding funny things like every time you hit the paddles, it was making fart sounds and like, oh yeah, it's funny, ha ha. So very very immature for me and my son. So I thought it was funny. I thought it was hilarious. But this is going to fundamentally change how we do things, and we are in. I knew we were in it before, but after last night and my experimentation, I think we're even more so. The world is changing before our eyes right here.
Here's the problem though, Mike. None of that has to do with Power BI. And I agree with you completely, and I'm 1,000% with you.
Yeah.
But that almost makes Power BI less relevant to a data scientist, right? Because all those things live in Fabric or are much upstream than
I would agree with you, Tommy.
Power BI.
Yes, correct.
I've already, like I said, I've tried multiple ways. I've had quite a few experiences trying to sell Power BI or at that point in the stream to data scientists where we have the semantic model now. You can connect to that and it's completely irrelevant. Forget the tooling itself. Forget just, hey, download Power BI desktop data scientist. That's already a non-starter. Just
correct. I agree with you.
Data at that point, you're still dealing with one. I think data scientists are a bit academia, so there's a lot of they're going to follow best practices or white papers that have already been followed before they're going to just use a random tool. And
dude, when I was in academia, we were constantly 5 years behind the industry.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm in the data community. I know what's going on. The things I was learning in college or for like my data science stuff, we were 5 years behind. I was still building Hive and building like Hadoop and things. I was like, that was already, by the time I got to that step, it's already like a service that's built into Fabric. So like to me, like academia does something, to your point, Tommy, I agree with you. Academia is going to do their thing. But I think right now they're constantly 5 years behind where we are right now in the technology space. And like us, we're in the tech space right now. We're seeing it change before our eyes. I hope that school and academia stuff catches up. And so their best practice becomes what we're building right now.
Right. Is there any argument that can be had with data scientists, data scientists about Power BI and any relevancy? Because the way we're putting it right now, there's basically a complete bridge, or the bridge is broken between both. Is there any bridge?
The only way that, I can't see them doing anything in Power BI unless somebody makes it because they want to do a wide distribution, because as much as they like to, talk about the fact that they can just do their thing and do their stuff, it has a limited visualization aspect because it doesn't distribute. So if they want to really distribute their information widely, then Power BI can offer that for them. But how many people find that useful? Right. Yeah, not so many.
So I want to tag on your comment there, Ginger, because I do know something. I feel like there's a hidden feature inside Fabric that we're not actually tapping into yet. I think this is a Fabric. So pure Power BI, will data scientists come to it? Probably not. I think we're all talking about like, look, it's going to be the Fabric world has really enticed that data scientist person. And I think my mentality of what a data scientist is substantially changing now because we're going to have the term citizen. I'm going to coin it right here, guys. Citizen data scientists, right? I don't know if it's been out in the world yet, but like we have citizen data engineers, we have citizen BI professionals or report, citizen modelers. Now there's going to be a citizen data scientists, but we're trying to commoditize what the data scientist does. And I just did a podcast episode with Irin from Microsoft, the PM team. He has brought AI functions now to like notebooks, and that's going to be coming to data flows, and it's going to come other places as well. It's going to be in the warehouse, the SQL data warehouse. So if you haven't checked out that video, definitely watch it. It's very informative. He does a lot of preview features that you can't see out today, but you can get a kind of an early preview of what AI functions are doing inside the context of Microsoft Fabric. So just want to highlight that as well. Going back to your point, Ginger, where the data scientists might want to start playing, the visualization side is limited. I think there's an opportunity for us to build notebooks in view mode in org apps. So in an organizational app, you can put a notebook in that's in view mode only. You're not running the cells, so you have to like run the notebook, right? And once the notebook has been executed, you can hide things, and then you can put the notebook into view only mode, and then you can attach the notebook to an org app. And I think, Ginger, this is a great, balance between, look, I need to get data from the data scientist into the hands of decision makers and business people in the organization. And so I really like what this is doing. I wish there was more here in features, and this is maybe where workloads or custom workloads that third-party ISVs can build and add to the experience, where we can get a richer experience for that data scientist, really building like Deneb, highly customized, very interactive visuals, and bringing them into these org apps where you can now have a Power BI report, a PDF, an Excel file, and now we have the notebook that the data scientist has built to show you some more elaborate visualizations, or even tell a story with data. It's almost like a white paper, I'm thinking, right? Here's some text, and then there's a visual, and here's some more text and another visual. You can kind of really guide the user through. That's something that Power BI does not do well with, is like copious amounts of text formatting and then a visual intermingled with more text and more visuals. It's kind of just visualization side of things. And you can even embed Power BI reports into the notebook. So maybe you can do like a view only notebook with an embedded Power BI report in the middle of it. And then now you can like get the data stuff done, and the report can just show up and be there. Like there's some really potentially interesting relationships between these elements here that could be really useful for the data scientist.
Yeah, I've not seen this feature, but I mean, they do a lot of visualizations. They write them all in R and Python. So if there was a way of basically like hiding all of the code and just making a narrative, and here's my visuals, and I'll hide the code so you don't see the stuff that generates that visual to provide. And now they do a lot of cut and paste to take the video that could actually run and have more interactivity would be of value. That would be useful, but be widely used at all.
So. And I think there's kind of the two barriers, Ginger. I completely agree, because I think we're getting closer to what the actual user story or the grow up story for data science in the Power BI or Microsoft Fabric is. And I think there's really two critical functions that need to happen. I think it's the one lake is going to be a critical part. I think if we can't get data scientists, or if the one lake can't play nicely with data scientists, we're at a non-starter. So I think that's the first critical junction that has to be passed. Mm-hmm. I think once we're able to get there, Mike, to your point, that's the grow up story with notebooks and the organizational apps. I think we're going to cut the bridge with Power BI. We understand they're really, and it's not because one doesn't do the things it needs to do. It's just they're for two different use cases at the end of the day, data scientists and what Power BI is meant to do. So I think the first critical junction that we have to cross is, can we get them at least to use a snapshot of one lake? Can we get them, rather than connecting farther upstream, can we get them to be okay with one lake? Great. We can do that. Well, to your point, Mike, we can have that citizen developer, and dare I say, a vibe data scientist. Now we're talking my language.
Let's go. Vibe data scientist. Like I'm all in on this
vibe
one.
Scientisting. I don't know.
I'm a vibe.
I don't know what the verbiage. How do you verb it? But
how do you vibe it? Well, you're vibe coding, right? Is that the verb?
So
vibe code.
Vibe scientist.
So I'm a
I don't know.
I'm a vibe scientist.
Yeah, which
Ooh, maybe we got to work on it. We're not, the marketing's not there yet.
The marketing's we're working on the marketing.
Let's go back to Microsoft and their marketing team so they can ruin the name of this one for us. Let's
user defined scientist. Yeah, so UDS.
User defined scientist.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is those are the critical junctions for data scientists or that world to say, you know what, there's actually value for us here to not just be okay with this, but it makes a lot of sense. We're again organizational apps and playing the one leg. And do you think I'm missing anything here for those kind of what would the barrier to entry to be?
I think you pretty much nailed it right there. Seriously, they want the data. Yes, absolutely. Give me that. Data scientists want all the data. But after that, and I really am intrigued by this vibe scientist thing, because here's the thing: business users know. I'm always intrigued by, and there's always like this group of people who just answer the questions for the executives, and they want all the weird, wacky stuff, and they're dumping everything in Excel.
Yes.
Instead, move to vibe sciencing, then they would really be able to provide the answers execs are looking for.
Actually, this is
what if we could vibe an Excel document? What if we vibed Excel? Coded Excel. Now we're talking talk about a large audience. I don't know how many users are of Microsoft Excel. I don't know if I've ever actually heard an official number, but I'm guessing it's between
I can tell you what Microsoft says: 1 out of every 6 people on the planet.
Okay, so one out of every 6. That would mean like over 1 billion. I mean, I've always been saying the number of 750 to 800 million monthly active users use Excel. But Ginger, if you say 1 out of 6. I mean, that's well over 1 billion users of Excel are a year. So that's a huge number. Like that could be a major audience for, I'm going to put my sarcastic hat on here. That's a major number for Microsoft to make sure that every Excel user in the world is using AI and charging CUs back to the organization, because then Microsoft can make more money because you're consuming all this CU. But I don't know. I think this could be really a potential here.
So
Excel
let me actually give you
store in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me actually give you a personal workflow of this citizen data scientist or this vibe data scientist. This is actually from real life, not even a scenario. Had some basic data, 10,000 data points, not a lot, and everything. The only value rating was a 1 to 5 rating on these points. I made a paginated report, exported a CSV, fed it to ChatGPT or local model. I said, I want you to come up with some advanced analytics here. Tell me potentials, tell me the elites, yada, yada, yada. And it generated the numbers, but it also had all the Python behind it. I put that in a notebook, and I was actually able to dive in to say, okay, all these new metrics that it created, how did it create it? And basically fed this to Fabric, created this Fabric notebook. Mike, to your point, created a view only. And all of a sudden, this simple data set that I had that was 1 to 5 average ratings, all of a sudden I had numbers like the Elite Index, potentials kind of thing. And all these things that I didn't write myself, I didn't generate. And guess what happened? They were so effective that we actually rewrote all those metrics into the semantic model.
Right.
So, and all of this was done through, for instance, the vibe coding, or really me being a citizen data scientist. All of this was, you look at the formulas, it was square roots, standard deviations, and I just had to translate them back to DAX. But there's a big use case here for, that's in this over, I know, slightly moving gears here, but to our point here, Mike, and Ginger, it's not just the data scientist who's going to do data science in Fabric. Just like right now, it's not just a engineer who's doing engineering in Fabric.
I agree with you, Tommy. When I look at this, everything is becoming more of a commodity, and I'm thinking about it going like, this is continually becoming more and more of an accessibility option for anyone to use and play with. So I'm very excited about this. Wow. Okay. Well, this was an amazing topic today. This was heavily large language models, AI, vibe everything, right? There's probably a shirt out there somewhere like, I vibe everything, and, something along those lines. But thank you all very much for listening to the podcast today. Let's just kind of quickly go through some final thoughts here, right? Ginger, what is your final thought on kind of this topic for data scientists and Power BI? Where does this fit for you?
I think that there's not necessarily anything in Power BI in fabric models, that's where I see him doing it. But to Tommy's point, I see there's a giant possibility for Vibe data sciencing. And I see that is where it's going to be using Power BI. And that I think is a huge potential right there.
Tommy, what do you think? Final thoughts here for your side.
And it's super quick. I think just like everything with Fabric, we have to change our mindsets around who is it for and how's it going to work, because the technology,
agree,
as I've been saying and beating my chest on, is changing our processes and changing the audience. So, and I think we're seeing now finally where Fabric is changing that around data science.
And Microsoft is a big ship. So one thing I'll say here is I think the industry of AI, vibe coding, this whole experience, it's very ahead of its time. And Microsoft think of it as like a large ship, right? It's going to take them some time to steer the ship towards what's kind of out there. And I also think there's a lot of gimmicky things right now in this whole vibe coding space. There's a lot of things that aren't maybe really polished yet, but I think we're on the edge. I mean, I haven't seen this level of excitement for myself until I saw Power Query inside Excel, and I saw the original Power BI, Power Designer before it was Power BI Desktop. Like, this is the same level of like, oh, this is going to change things. This is going to really, I mean, it will, that moment, there was like this moment where you look at the industry and you say, something's different here. Mm-hmm. The velocity of what we're doing is substantially changing based on some new technology. I think this is one of those moments. I think I'm having that moment right now that we, mark 2025, early 2025. This is a moment where we're going to start seeing this whole agents area is going to become incredibly important, and you're going to need to be able to talk to everything. It's going to be an expectation. It'll be an expectation on every single program. I was just making some social media marketing things, and I was in a program that does like distribution of those elements, right? It was allowing me to communicate to another program and talk to it and ask what I wanted. So I was in, I don't even remember the program I was in. I think I was in Canva, maybe was what I was in. Canva's announcement recently was just absurd. I don't know if you guys follow Canva at all, but they just had a crazy AI announcement for their program. But they're doing this stuff, and now you can like jump over to other programs and extract things into it. Like, hey, I can embed. Oh, I was in Miro, another one, a program that I use a lot. You can go into Miro, and then you can embed Figma. You can embed other objects right into it, and you can like communicate and move things between apps almost seamlessly now. This is crazy. Like, we're getting to a really interesting world now, and I'm very excited, and I'm very happy we're in this space. So anyways, very fun, good things to talk about there. With that being said, thank you all for listening. This has been a great episode. Thank you for all the ears on this podcast. We've had a record number of people listening to the podcast, so thank you. I think, Ginger, you're bringing in the large numbers here. We appreciate you being on the podcast. Awesome. Thank you so much. But we wanted to say, if you like this episode, if you just love vibe data sciencing, We'll go with it. If you just love it, please share this episode with somebody else. Let them know on social medias or just talk about it at work. We really do appreciate it. We don't advertise. We don't really push the podcast at all. But we really do want to get it out to more ears and more listeners, because we think this is a fun way to interact and talk about the expert area here according to the podcast. With that being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And share with a friend, since we do this for free. If you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, well, head over to powerbi.tip/podcast, leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of PowerBI.tip's social media channels.
Excellent. Thank you all very much, and we will see you next time. Cheers.